In Episode 16, titled Harden User and Device Authentication Against Attacks, we position authentication strength as the front door that adversaries probe first because it sits at the intersection of identity, device, and session. Attackers test stolen passwords, replay tokens, hammer endpoints with automation, and coax users into approvals they did not intend to grant. A resilient program accepts that pressure as a given and designs controls that make successful misuse uncommon and short-lived. Our goal here is to turn authentication from a set of toggles into a coherent posture. Clear factor choices, careful session hygiene, adaptive checks that escalate when signals look wrong, and evidence that shows what happened when you need to investigate quickly and act with confidence. Password policy still matters because passwords rarely vanish entirely, but the rules must reflect how attacks actually work. Favor length-first guidance, phrases that are easy to remember and hard to guess, over complex composition that breeds reuse and sticky notes. Screen every new password against a breach corpus so known compromise choices are rejected at creation, and encourage password managers to generate and store high-entropy strings where user memory adds no value. Rotation is not a wellness ritual. Rotate on compromise, suspected exposure, or role changes that elevate risk, and make the trigger conditions explicit. When policy centers on practical resistance, length, uniqueness, breach checks, and manager use, you lower guessing success rates and reduce the hidden costs of poor memorability. Credential storage and service secrets demand engineering discipline because one mistake can leak into every other control. User passwords belong behind slow, memory-hard hashing with unique salts using modern key derivation functions, spelled KDFs on first mention, such as well-tuned algorithms that make offline cracking expensive. Service-to-service credentials and application secrets should live in a vault that enforces least privilege access, versioned rotation, dual control for retrieval, and audit trails that name requesters and purpose. Avoid hard-coded secrets in images or repositories. Bind retrieval to workload identity, so secrets are fetched at runtime only by authorized components. Integrity here looks like reproducible configuration, measured rotation intervals, and logs that let you answer who accessed what, when, and from where without guesswork. Session management is the quiet backbone that separates one good login from hours of safe work. Define idle and absolute timeouts aligned to sensitivity so stale sessions do not become free tokens for anyone who finds an unlocked screen or hijacked tab. Require re-authentication for sensitive actions such as privilege elevation, payment instruction changes, key downloads, or policy edits, and bind sessions to device attributes so tokens are not valid from unexpected machines. Protect refresh flows with server-side checks and one-time semantics, and invalidate sessions rapidly on password resets, factor changes, or suspected compromise. When sessions end predictably and step-ups appear at the right moments, you reduce the blast radius of a single slip while keeping legitimate work smooth. Adaptive signals turn static policy into situational awareness that reacts before damage spreads. Start with high signal inputs such as Internet Protocol, spelled IP on first mention, reputation, device posture for management agents, and geovelocity comparisons that detect impossible travel by clock and distance. Blend in recent authentication patterns, failed attempt streaks, and unusual resource access for that identity. When thresholds trip, apply step-up MFA that is phishing resistant, restrict scope to lower risk actions, or deny entirely pending review. Document which signals drive which responses and record decisions so tuning is evidence-based, not folklore. Adaptive control is not a black box. It is a set of published rules that change friction only when risk rises. Defenses against brute force and credential stuffing must slow the attacker without turning availability into collateral damage. Apply per-account and per-source rate limits with exponential backoff that lengthens intervals after clusters of failures. And introduce lightweight, origin-tied challenges that add cost to automated campaigns without punishing everyday users. Lockouts should be short, proportional, and communicated clearly, with alternative recovery channels that include identity proofing rather than guessable questions. Monitor for distributed attacks that walk across many accounts at low velocity, and coordinate network-level mitigations when patterns emerge. The objective is deterrence that preserves service quality. Humans feel the system is responsive, while bots discover the juice is not worth the squeeze. Protocol hygiene closes gaps that persist even when factors and rate controls are solid. Use transport layer security, spelled TLS on first mention, with current versions, strong cipher suites, and careful certificate management from issuance through renewal. Add replay defenses such as nonces and strict token audiences so assertions cannot be reused across sessions or services. Require mutual authentication on administrative services where appropriate. Jump hosts, configuration endpoints, orchestration planes. So servers verify clients and clients verify servers before secrets flow. Disable legacy and anonymous options even if a few dusty utilities complain. Document exceptions with owners and retirement dates. Protocol choices are quiet decisions that either shrink or widen your attack surface for years. Device trust brings the endpoint into the conversation, so identity is not acting alone. Enroll managed devices with an issued certificate tied to a directory identity. Verify secure boot and tamper states where platforms support them. And check posture for disk encryption, screen lock, and runtime protections before granting access to sensitive resources. For unmanaged or bring your own device scenarios, bound risk by confining access to web-only experiences, containerizing corporate data, and stepping up MFA on every privileged action. Make trust continuous. If posture degrades mid-session or a jailbreak is detected, restrict capabilities or end the session gracefully with a clear message. The pattern is simple: known person, known device, known state. Authentication events must land in centralized logs with correct time, so investigations do not devolve into reconciliation puzzles. Synchronize clocks to a reliable source everywhere the auth story is written. Identity providers, applications, proxies, gateways, endpoints, so event order means what it seems. Record subject, method, factors used, device or certificate identifiers, source network facts, resource requested, decision, and reason codes when denials occur. Preserve failed attempts alongside successes. Retain enough history to spot precursors to compromise and protect the logs in tamper-evident stores with role-based access. When something goes wrong, responders should reconstruct the narrative in minutes, not days, and move from symptoms to containment with confidence. Common pitfalls deserve direct remedies because they persist in mature environments. Short message service codes, spelled SMS on first mention, remain vulnerable to phishing and carrier attacks. Retire them in favor of device-bound passkeys or security keys, and keep TOTP as a transitional option with strict throttles. Shared accounts obliterate accountability. Replace them with unique identities, audited elevation, and emergency break glass that expires by design. Unmonitored service credentials linger in scripts and build systems. Migrate them to a vault, bind retrieval to workload identity, and rotate under policy with alerting on stale use. Each fix is a small, deliberate refactor that trades legacy convenience for measurable safety. Consider a short scenario that shows adaptive control earning its keep. An attacker reuses spilled credentials against a public portal. The first attempt arrives from a low-reputation network a continent away, minutes after the same user authenticated from a managed laptop at headquarters. Geovelocity and IP reputation elevate risk, and the policy demands step up with a phishing-resistant factor. The attacker cannot satisfy the challenge, rate limits increase backoff, and the identity provider flags the session as high risk. Simultaneously, the device posture signal fails, no enrolled certificate presented, and the application denies access to sensitive endpoints even if another route were tried. Logs stitch the denial, step up, and policy reasons into one case, and the user receives a gentle notification to change the password and review recent sessions. One bad password did not become a breach. To cement the posture, run a mini-review that ties factor strength, session hygiene, and device trust into one checklist you can read aloud. First, confirm phishing-resistant MFA as the baseline for privileged and high-risk apps with dates to retire weaker factors. Second, check session controls, idle and absolute timeouts, re-auth on sensitive acts, token binding to device, and rapid invalidation on resets and factor changes. Third, verify device trust gates, certificate enrollment for managed endpoints, posture checks before access, and graceful restriction on drift. Add a note on adaptive signals you enforce and the exact step-ups they trigger. When this single page matches reality, your authentication story is defensible and usable. We close with a concrete directive designed to move risk this week. Identify your top high-risk applications, administrative consoles, finance systems, code repositories, remote access gateways, and audit their factor policies, session settings, and device requirements. Where any rely on SMS or push-only approvals, prioritize replacement with phishing-resistant MFA, set explicit deadlines, and open the change tickets with owners and rollback plans. Capture before and after evidence, policy exports, probe transcripts, and a short note on user impact and exceptions with expiry. When the most critical doors adopt stronger proof, the entire environment gets harder to pry open, and your incident calendar gets quieter. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.